Subcommittee, and great friend, and I wish you great success in your presentation to the Steering Committee, to chair the committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you most of all for your friendship and mentorship over these many years. For the 12 years I've served in Congress, every day this institution has been animated by a force of nature, and that force of nature may not have height in stature, physical stature, but height in legacy. And your legacy, Mr. Chairman, is large, and you're sharing the story, and you've shared it with me many times, about your dad. And the American dream that you personally embody makes you the most credible spokesman for American economic leadership. You've been incredibly effective with good humor, with really shrewd political acumen, and I will never forget your mentorship of me over these years when you said to me and admonished me many times, if you try to do everything, you won't do any of it well. I don't think I've followed your advice all the time, but that's really, really good advice. And for incoming freshman members, I'm going to say a very outstanding member of Congress, Patrick McHenry, once told me, and I'll pass that advice down. But again, thank you for your amazing advocacy for innovation, for democratization of our capital markets, and again, being such a tireless promoter of the American dream.
Thank you, Andy.
Godspeed, buddy.
Thank you.
And without objection, I want to offer 3 letters into the record praising Chairman McHenry's extraordinary leadership over these last number of years. And I just have to say, National Venture Capital Association, America's Credit Unions, and the Electronic Transaction Association.
Thanks.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, let me launch into a question, I think a question that you would appreciate. The U.S. has 4.4% of the world's population, but over 50% of capital is raised here. 20 years ago, the U.S. was home to 83% of global venture capital activity, but in 2022, that amount dropped to 47%. That's not good for the American dream. We want it to go back up. Given the large increase in global capital competition, we must foster a competitive environment for venture capital firms. That's why I introduced the Developing and Empowering Our Aspiring Leaders Act, or the DEAL Act, which saves VC firms from the cost and complexities that come with SEC registration and allows them to expand into new markets that otherwise would be unachievable. This is incredibly important for markets around the country, instead of just New York or Silicon Valley, to receive investments from venture capital firms, increasing capital formation for businesses who may be left behind otherwise. This is kind of personal for me because, let's face it, in my home state of Kentucky, there's some venture capital, but the venture capital ecosystem is obviously not as robust as in some of these coastal areas. Mr. Ward, can you please discuss the proximity to the coasts issue, and those of us in flyover country, and the companies and the founders in flyover country in rural Kentucky, how can they access venture capital?
Congressman, thank you for the question. We live under the premise or belief that entrepreneurs will follow capital and employees will follow those entrepreneurs. And so the key to catalyzing an ecosystem, a regional ecosystem of venture capital is to attract the investors. One of the things you can do, of course, is make it easier from regulatory burdens to create an emerging manager fund, and I applaud you and thank you for supporting these emerging managers. We as a country are great at producing doctors, lawyers, accountants. We're not the best at producing entrepreneurs. By sort of definition, entrepreneurs are the aberration, not the rule. And one of the things that I think emerging managers and these investors are very good at is finding and cultivating and growing these entrepreneurs. And so anything we can do to support creating regional markets, not on the coasts, but in Kentucky, in Arkansas, in Texas, where we can get investors together, emerging managers together, and they will become the engine for manufacturing the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Great, thanks so much. And Mr. Coley, a question for you. The U.S. obviously has to stay at the forefront of new technology in the financial sector. Our chairman has been a champion for making sure the United States is a destination and that we are the innovative leader in the world. But AI is a great example of where we have to be the leader for national security reasons, in addition to economic competitiveness reasons. So, Mr. Coley, from your perspective, what challenges are companies facing that prevent firms from achieving the full potential of these emerging technologies?
Thank you for the question. I would say that today, I don't see many challenges for these companies in adopting AI, but there is a risk. I think there's a risk if regulation comes in too fast on open source AI. When you take a look at how startups actually get going, they lean on open source software quite a bit. And with some of the discourse happening around regulation, I do worry about that the regulation ends up restricting the amount of open source AI that's out there.
That's a great point. I think that is why it won't work very well in China, where you have a closed society. So thank you very much to all of our witnesses. And once again, thanks, Chairman, for your extraordinary leadership. I yield.
We'll now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Foster, for 5 minutes.